is happened, and all the volume from the universe, like all the continents, happened at that moment, and it continues to spread out and expand. So now, if you envision this cup, like, is all the volume in the universe, like when it first happened. Like, so now, if this was filled up with water, like, so you'd see how thick this cup is right here, right now. This would be the initial point. But if I was to spill it out with water, like all the volume, they would get continuously thinner over time, right? Like if I was to spell this out, it'd be a thin layer over time, and it wouldn't be even. Almost like if you watch lava expand. It kind of expands indiscriminately, it makes a random pattern. And if you've ever spilled water, you know it doesn't spill in a perfect circle, right? Like it just kind of spills towards the gravity or whatever. I guess that whatever indentations or whatever there would have to be would flows from high to low pressure, basically. So like if you started water at the top of a mountain, it's going to flow towards the sea, like go towards the sea, right? So in the universe, like it shouldn't really be affected by that because it should be all the same. So it may potentially spread evenly, but most with gravitational forces, it would only expand based on indiscriminately. Like it wouldn't be a perfect circle, right? So one way we can measure this it's unlikely that you'd find a perfect point because the Earth revolves around you and the universe does revolve around you, and like so we quintessentially we're all the center of our own universe, because it's not like we're around the universe or we're around the world. It's all around us, right? So it's from our focal point. So it's relative, like that perspective is relative. So but basically, so there would be a civilization that would be quintessentially in the center of the universe, as long as they weren't too close to the center of their galaxy, which there's always a black hole, which would eventually eat their planet and eat their star and then their planet. But so basically what they could do is they can measure, because scientists know how fast the universe is expanding, right? By how fast the starlight's going away from us. And so if you were to measure in each direction from us, like find basically say this was north, east, south, and west, just say that it was like that, then you'd be able to see the depth of the universe relative to our position. So basically, so if you're to measure, let's say this some star in the distant galaxy that's traveling away, we know the set speed that it's traveling away based on almost like a flashlight. It only has like a certain range of light before it gets dim, and then you can't even see it anymore. Like it can't illuminate anymore, right? So the same thing would happen with stars, like the lights. Like if we were to measure like all the time consistently, like almost like we could forecast how the continents are slowly migrating and emerging over a period of time, we'd be able to see the expansion of the universe and the depth of the universe relative to our current position, basically. Because it's like anything, like once again with the volume of this cup, right? If like, so just say this was the today's current time period, right? Like 2025. So there might be this, like the universe might be, say, this thick and this wide, but as the volume stays the same, it's a universal constant. It's another reason why we can't detect when people die, because energy has to transform shape. Like, so the kinetic energy for me moving and scratching my eye or whatnot, like we could turn it into different energy forms, so like heat energy or pneumatic or mechanical energy. Like, so these just transform shape, right? Like, so when we die, this energy from our soul basically ascends to hell or heaven, pardon me, ascends to heaven or hell, and depending on your life choices. So that being said, right, like, so that energy has to go somewhere, right? It's a mathematical. I'll just show you here. And it never loses. Like, so you get the same amount of energy. It never loses energy, basically. So it stays the same. It's a universal constant. So, what is the rule regarding energy conservation? The law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed from one form to another. This means the total amount of energy is closed and the system remains constant even as it changes form. So that's the premise of my here, I guess, for the universe expansion. But so that's also why during, like, say, whenever there's a tsunami that kills like 100,000 people, scientists aren't able to measure it and detect. Okay, well, because we're all basically, like, just say we're a 60-watt light bulb or whatever our human body possesses, right? We're a certain amount of wattage that we possess. But we, like, so if there's now, say, a 60-watt light bulb, you wouldn't really notice that much of a difference, right? It'd be so minuscule. But now if 100,000 people died, so that'd be 6 million watts if we were all 60-watt light bulb, right? So that would be 6 million watts. So you think we'd be able to detect that change in the universe, but you can't, because the universe cannot be created or destroyed. So that means that there's only that constant. So we can't detect this change in the universe, but we can measure the thickness of the universe if it is expanding. Like, because since it can't be changed or destroyed, it's like if I was to fill up this cup once again, it would only have so much water volume in the cup that when I pour it out, I can't create any more. So you would think that the universe is going to be flattened over time, and we'd be able to predict how flat it would become over time based on measuring how far. Like, if we measured all four distances once again, like, so north, east, south, and west. Just say we found a star that's almost perfectly in line with us north, like, say, 90 degrees apart, and then we were able to, and then say even 6 axes, so even this way, like towards the camera, then away from the camera the other way, so there'd be 6 axes, and then we can measure. We know how fast the universe is expanding, and then we can measure the starlight, and the star should dim slightly over a period of time, especially if we're constantly measuring it. Then we'd be able to measure where we are in the universe thickness-wise, like if we're close to this edge, or we're close to this edge, or we're directly dead center, and we'll be able to see how long it would take and predict when it would likely to flatten, and then we could postulate on what the consequences could be, like, once that were to occur at that point in time. But that's basically it. So once again, so that's why with that universal energy rule, that's why, the energy that's inside your body, like, look at my eyes, like, that's my soul, my aura, right? So my aura is made up of like a star, like our sun is a star to another planet. Right, like, we call it our sun because it's our sun here, but if you're on a distant planet, you would only see it as a star in the sky, right? So stars are suns in different solar systems. So some star exploded billions of years ago, and the iron in our blood and the gold in our minds are a result of it. But our aura is our energy inside our body is that sunlight encapsulated in human form, in all life forms. And so once again, this is my aura, and so you should be able to see something when you look into my eyes specifically like this, and you'll see something at any point in time that you watch this video. You can come back and check something out. You'll see something that you thought only you knew, but there are powers that be, right? Like, there are higher forms of consciousness, and there is my aura, like, since I do have evolved human biology, and I'm related to more deities, like, I'm related to Buddha, Shiv, Hashem, Muhammad the prophet, and Jesus, like, genetically in my DNA. Like, I have the most relations on the planet, and my aura is different than my evolutionary kids, which is different than the human race. So if somebody were to say that they were God or related to God the most, I would have that claim, because I have evolved human biology, but I'm able to predict the future, and people have known this my entire life. I just found this out less than 7 months ago, that I was able to predict the future. Like, I haven't used it advantageously for myself, because actually less than 7 months ago, when was it, in March? I guess in March I went to Espanola, and I realized I could win the lottery if I wanted to. Like, I just showed right there. There's in my eyes, if you look, those were last week's winning lottery numbers, and I haven't checked online, but I could predict all I have to do is grab rocks, and then So there isn't a really good surface in here, but there's subliminal everywhere. But there's subliminal even on rocks, right? So I'm able to use the subliminal and predict the future with the subliminal based on that actually. So I'm gonna just bring this somewhere and I'll show you something real quick. So I'll just show you here. So there's that one right there. Then there's that one. Then there's this one. Then there's this one. And then there's this one. Then there's that one. Then there's that one. Then there's that one. So this one could be last. That one could be last. But I'll just show you here. Like, see, you can clearly see a face right there, and that's subliminal. So I'm just gonna pause this again. There's a follow up right there. So anyways, with energy conservation, so you can see how it can never be created or destroyed. So with those last two images I just showed you, it just shows that I'm able to predict the future. So once again, if you look into my eyes at any point in time, you'll be able to see something to help you get through. That you won't be able to win the lottery or anything like that, because everybody would want to win the lottery, and unfortunately, if winning the lottery is akin to, say, taking, because a lot of people want to be rich and wealthy, right? It would be akin to going to the top of Mount Everest, right? So winning the lottery would be like if you took a helicopter ride up to, like, if it was possible to take a helicopter ride up to the Mount Everest without earning it. Sure, it'd be great. You would have a fantastic view. You would have just the same view as the top, like as anybody that earned it. But if you were to earn it and you were to actually to climb up the Mount Everest and you would appreciate it more. It's almost like if I don't know if you like to cook or whatnot. If somebody gives you food, it's not the same thing as if you cooked it and you prepared and you did the blood, sweat, and tears and you prepared it yourself. You're gonna appreciate it more, especially if it's slow cooking. Like if you're slow cooking, you're smelling it all day, and because eventually, like when you have a goal, you come close. Either you come to a realization that you can never achieve your goal, like if you're smart, or you come to a realization that your goal is now within reach, and then you get hungrier, right? And then it's like you get to find it, like if you're a championship, like if you're a challenger, like fighting the champion, then you find this new gear, and then you rise and you become a champion, right? And before, you have to do this in your mind before you could do it in reality. So the same thing, like, so if you were, like, so once again, like, so if you look in my eyes, I'm going to give you some small philosophical things to help you get through your day, but I'm not going to, be able to help you, like occasionally, randomly, like you might find out what your life purpose is going to be, but it's not going to be, I'm not going to tell you how to win the lottery or anything like that, but your life purpose would set you on that track. And then as long as you work hard, right? Because, perseverance and hard work and competition is fierce. To be a doctor, you have to be the best out of one and out of 413 people, right? So that's just to be a doctor, right? Like, so now imagine to be a pro athlete. So let's just see right here, to be a professional hockey, say soccer player, like football. So let's say professional. I guess the odds of becoming a professional soccer player are very low. Okay, so it doesn't competition, I guess. So this would say, like, so less than, like, European clubs is that's only 1 in 10,000. Right, so that's I thought it would be even higher than that, but Premier League is a little bit easier. But so that's probably this right here, this number right here, like right there. So that's that'd be the ones, tens, hundreds. Well, say tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, and then 100,000s. So right, so you would have to be basically 1 out of 290,000 athletes become that, right? So it's hard. It's very hard, right? And competition gets fierce, right? Every time, you go up in a league. Like I love, like my son played soccer and hockey, and I loved watching. Like, don't get me wrong, I like watching the pros play professional athlete, but I love watching. I don't see it subliminal, but I love watching the development of the league over the season, right? Like, so the best players would get better, but then the middle of the pack players would get better, and then the weaker players would get better, right? So especially over the years, right? Like, I don't know how many years he played hockey, but it was enough that I got to see this development over year after year, right? Because, the funniest thing is, I'll sum this up quick. But the funniest thing is when you first watch them play soccer at like 5 years old, like just say this is the ball, you just see all the kids, they just swarm after the ball, right? They're just swarming after the ball. Whereas, like after a while, then it's more coordinated and more strategy, and so the game gets faster, and you got split a second time into to get your kicks off or your pass off before the defender's there to take the ball away from you, right? So it gets faster. So competition's fierce. So that being said, so with that analogy, once again, with the climb to the top of Mount Everest, right? It's hard, right? If not everybody would do it, right? So if you were to do it, that would be a milestone of life, and you'd be really happy, and you'd really satiate. That means to really appreciate the feeling of having overcome all the training that might have been necessary to achieve such a task, right? Like, because most people aren't going to be like, okay, I feel like climbing a Mount Everest, I'm going to go for the hardest one today, right? Usually they'll work up to that level, right? Because that's the hardest one on the planet, right? And so for them to be able to do this and to appreciate it and to reach that milestone, you'd appreciate it. It's almost like like when you're a kid, your parents buy you stuff, right? So when you get a job and you get to buy something that you earned, when you earn that money the first time, and you get to buy something that you wanted with that money that you earned, you appreciate it more, right? That's why I despise cheats, and but you have to appreciate the hard work and effort that people put into things to achieve certain goals, right? And so work hard and just achieve your goals. And if you have a job, I wish I would have done this. Like, I'm going to do this as soon as I go back to Toronto. I wanted to become a stockbroker. And so I'm going to, instead of taking the finance course, because like you can't, I tried searching on the internet how to become a stockbroker, and there's no clear-cut method, but it is finance. You take finance. So I'm just going to go to the university that offers finance and go to the book department and then just buy the books and then self-train myself, right? Because, I just want to day trade and learn how to do that, right? So it's not like I need an actual degree to facilitate my goals. But that being said, so if you're just working a job, just understand that getting an education is the key to success, and especially in the first world countries like Canada, United States, and the West, or any like Japan or Korea, countries like that. Competition's fierce, and you need a degree, and you need experience, and put in the effort, right? So then that being said, if you're a boss, then quickly does a couple things you would do is I mentioned this in my other videos, is you would just say you have two candidates or 4.0 candidates, and like you're like, wow, these are it's one or the other, right? So what you could do is you could challenge them, give them a test, and then see who completes it the fastest, the most efficient, right? Because then they're the smartest, right? Or another way you could determine this, if you're hiring a whole group of people, is you get a comedian and then you get them to tell a joke, because whoever lasts first at the joke is the smartest, and whoever lasts last is has the least intelligence, right? Because it's one thing to have somebody that has like say a 4.0 grade average that had to try and study for 30 hours a week, where the other guy had to try for like say 5 hours a week, right? So then in that scenario, right, that one person that tried for 5 hours a week is able to perform tasks 6 times as fast as the other guy or girl in this scenario, right? So that would mean you're able to utilize because when you're hiring people, they are a resource on your team, right? You want to find a good team and that works together, mesh. And a good example is hockey. Like, you see hockey players or professional athletes, sometimes you have two talented teammates and they just don't mesh or gel well on the same line, but on different lines, like because you can't have too many. There's that expression, too many Chiefs, not enough Indians, right? So like you can't have two franchise players on one team because then they both want to be the guy, right? They want to take the game when it's shot or whatever. But that also transcends in business, right? So you might have like just say you had a day night shift, right? Like instead of putting the two best guys or best individuals, best girls or whatever, or during the day shift, you might have one on day shift and one on night shift because they're able to run their own line and be the leader, right? And whoever exemplifies the most leadership capabilities would be the one that you'd want to go with. But whoever meshes the best, and you could do a team building exercise and to understand to see how well they work as a team and to see how you could facilitate them in your business. Right, because if you watch The Big Bang Theory, like Sheldon Cooper in the show, he's this massive genius, but he can't disseminate it to the average, in layman's terms, to the average person. Whereas I forget the other character, but his name's Johnny, I believe his real name is, like the main guy in the show. But he's the guy, he's the go-to guy. Like, so you'd have the brain guy that he's like, okay, I'm the super smart guy, but he would also have the other guy that could be able to talk to everybody else, talk to the bosses who may not understand. Like if you're doing rocketry, they might not understand the rocketry aspect of it, but they're just a really good CEO or whatever, right? So you'd have that middleman guy that would be able to disseminate the information. And well, to me, disseminate means to break down into small pieces and into that are bite-sized and digestible and easy to understand. Like that isn't the correct definition, but that's how I like to use it anyways. And so bite-sized pieces, and so you would have the brains guy that's able to break it down into layman's terms, and so it's easily understandable so people could pass on that information. And anytime you hear good information or useful advice, you get really good karma points when you pass it on to somebody else, right? So that being said, I guess one last piece of advice I'll give you is interest is like a snowball. Right, it compounds over time, right? Like you start with a little snowball and you start rolling, it becomes a big snowball, then you can build a snowman in that analogy. But if it's financially, if it's debt, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So like for the Canadian government, for compounding the interest and snowballing over time, hiding evolution within myself, because you could see how smart I am by this video. But other than that part where I stumbled over words because one of the newscasters, I'll just show you right here, I'm going to panhandle outside their office soon when they're on TV. But you could almost see me get aged on film when I said that. But that being said, so Canada's compounding their problem by trying to hide a lie. Basically, like it's going to be obvious that I do have evolution over time, and eventually the lie is going to be revealed, and then Canada is going to be the laughingstock internationally, basically, because I'm at the point where I'm going to sue the Canadian government, chastise them legally in court, and then I'm going to seek asylum, right? So Canada is going to lose the greatest opportunity that they've ever had, right? And they've historically, Canada has done this in the past. Like I'm ashamed sometimes to be Canadian because the poor choices we made, like with the Indian residential schools, unfortunately, you got to thank every Indigenous person that the fact that we know the daily nutritional intake of how much calcium, how much vitamins we need. We only know this because they exploited this information from starving Indigenous kids in residential schools. They starved them of these nutrients and they died. And then when so many died, they're like, okay, well, we need this much iron in our blood. We need this much this, we need that much. It was all due to taking advantage of Indigenous kids, the Aboriginals of our land in Canada. And then to hiding my evolutionary DNA, they've exploited me my entire life, and you can see how I could make it so I get aged on film here, but it kind of defeats the purpose. But anyway, so another thing that Canada did was the Americans they made it so we got rid of our car industry. We used to have Benson, I believe, was a car manufacturer that Canada had, but we stopped doing that, so we import Fords, GMs, and American vehicles instead of having our own industry. And we're a first world country, right? We're more than capable of being technically savvy enough to have our own cars, but we don't. And we also had the most advanced fighter airplane. I'll just show you right here, the Avro Aero. And it was an intellectual brain drain for Canada as a result. It was over 100,000. Let's see, Avro Aero. Let's see what it says here. So that's what it was. So the Avro Arrow was a Delta Wing interceptor aircraft designed and built by Avro Canada, Mach 2 speed. So look how fast that was its top speed. That's still impressive to this day. But basically, America said pressured us to get rid of the Avro Arrow, and then 100,000 engineers left Canada. Right. So when was this? So all these engineers, all these talented Canadians left Canada, and what year was this? So they're 59, right? So that's say about 66 years ago. So that means there could be 3 generations of Americans that would have been Canadians that are super talented that are now talented Americans rather than talented Canadians. So it's a brain drain, right? So we lost. Intellectually, like it's hard to recover, right? 100,000 like smart people. It's one thing if America's like, if Canada's like, hey, here, take our social assistance people, take all our social assistance people off our hands, and then you take 100,000 of them, America, or take 300,000 of them, right? But to take 100,000 engineers off our, out of our shores is it's a brain drain, right? And we're suffering the consequences to this day, right? Because 3 generations of talented people, they went to America for the American dream, right? Because Canada, unfortunately, doesn't facilitate it, because they do waste a lot of money trying to exploit my DNA. Like they legalized marijuana partially for me to be because I was buying it, I was willing to risk a $90 fine buying $10 worth of marijuana a day. And so they decriminalized it and then they legalized it. But they haven't used any of the proceeds. Like they're making billions of dollars a year in taxes from marijuana sales. But yet they're not able to handle some of these fiscal responsibilities. And they've allowed inflation to occur. Like the Liberals are atrocious. They're atrocious. Like they were handing, like with COVID, they were handing out money like hand over foot without like any foresight of the consequences. Because what happens fiscally, just say you think, okay, well, if I print more money, I have more money. That's not how it works, right? You print more money, your money's worth less money, right? So if you say America, they print something like $35 million dollars a day, right? So now if they were to up that to say $70 million a day, then their money is worth half of what it would have been, if you get my drift. Because they're printing out twice as much, so then their money's worth half as much, right? So that's what happened. Canada was handing out so much money, they're printing more money than what they need and what they could, and we have a trade deficit right now, and partially because I've been they kept me in the mental health ward. They're trying to say that I have that they're trying to exploit my evolutionary DNA, and they basically my lawyer, I challenged the doctor, and the lawyer said that I represent myself very fulsomely, that my involuntary status should have been revoked. But then the written reasons why they kept me in here, they're like, well, sometimes we base it on hearsay. Right, so they totally ignored facts and they based their decision on hearsay to exploit me, right? So I should have been out of the hospital May 16th, and all Canada knows how to do is compound problems. They don't know that they never took compound interest. So that was the long and short. I had to chastise the Canadian government, partially, but I didn't intend on it with this video. So really the first part of the video was all I was going to do was just say with the volume of the universe. If you were to measure north, south, and east and west, and see the distance, because we know how fast we could calculate the rate of speed of the light traveling away from us, from the observable and non-observable universe. So the observable universe, we'd be able to determine it. Then we could be able to predict over time, right? Because what happens if we have a flat universe, right? That there could be some grave consequences, right? So there could be to be able to anticipate and try to predict this thing. But so Canada, and I ended up going down this. So when you get a mortgage, for instance, when you pay interest, you want to pay it off as fast as possible, right? But when you collect interest, you want to collect it as you want to have long intervals in between collecting it. If you could get a mortgage at the bank where you paid once every 5 years, the bank would love it. They would love it, right? Because that means they would have interest that would accrue. That means it gains interest over a 5-year period, right? Where the flip side of the coin is, if you could pay interest daily, if you pay your mortgage daily, you would save a ton of interest, right? So you can't do that. But open loans, like a car loan, like my very first car loan, for instance, it was 29.7% interest rate. Like, it was atrocious. But I just wanted to get a car loan. But, I'm good at math, and the car loan was open, and I realized the importance of interest. So the very first thing I did, my loan was, what was it? I think it was $274 biweekly. And then I put $500 extra the first month. So I'll just show you how much I saved, basically, because I shaved off 8 months worth of payments with that one $500 purchase. So 274 times 16 minus 500. So that $500 turned out to be the $4,384 worth of interest, but I saved $3,884 in interest. Just doing that. So like, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, holy cow! I just saved 8 months of payments, right? So, because the thing about when you get a loan, just because you're working today doesn't mean you're guaranteed to work tomorrow. Like these people right here, right? Once again, they chose poorly, so they're not going to be working tomorrow, right? So those that have overextend themselves, and so basically, like ideally, what you want to do is you want to assume that you could get a minimum wage job and only borrow accordingly, right? But like, so if you get a new job where all of a sudden you're getting more money, like there's two things you could do, right? You could spend more, or you could start to save and invest, right? Because if you're making $30,000 a year, and then now you're making $50,000 a year, you're now making $20,000 more than what you're used to, right? So if you were in debt when you're making that $30,000 a year, then sure, you're not going to be able to save much, right? But if you're not in debt, and like now you're making $20,000 extra a year that you're not used to making, right? So you got to get into a habit of saving money and investing before you get used to that money. Because once you're used to that $50,000, it's going to be hard to save $10,000. But if you go from $50,000 or $30,000 to $50,000, and then now you could easily spend $10,000 more, you're going to be more comfortable because you're making 33% more than what you were making in that scenario, right? Because you went from 30,000 to say 25% more in that scenario, but it would be a third of 30,000, right? 10,000 would be a third of 30,000. So you'd be making 33% more, but it'd be equivalent to 25% more, because 30,000 out of 40,000 would be 75%. So you'd be making 25%, but then you'd be able to save 10% or 25%, $10,000, right? And then you can invest in. So if you're young, right, they say that if you invest from 18 to 30, you're going to make more than somebody that invests from 30 to 65 on the stock market, right? So what you do is you invest in an index fund. An index fund is just say the top 500 companies. And then it doesn't matter every payday. It doesn't matter if the market's up or down, right? It doesn't matter. Like, you just invest. Like, so if it's $200 a pay, you just do $200 every pay. You just invest in the index fund, and then over that cycle, like as long as possible. If you went from 18 to 65, then you should have you should have over $1 million at least, right? Like and you'd be able to retire more comfortably, because the flip side of the coin is when you're young, you have all the energy in the world, but you have no time and no money because you're working, right? But then when you're 65 and retire, you should have money, you don't have energy, but you have time, right? So that's the thing. It's that life isn't the fairest, right? Like, so everybody does want to get rich quick, right? And so it is gratifying if you can do that. And I imagine, and so to be able to do it, you want to do, like, you want to swing for home runs, right? So like, that being said, so like if you like risk, and you can learn about how to do stocks, and you can follow some sort of strategies, and you could take a chance. So like, now with that $10,000, like say you wanted to, like, now you're going to invest, say you're going to save $5,000 a year. You're just going to put in your savings, and then now you'll have $5,000 extra, right? So then, like, just say you want to go on a trip, like, or just say this doesn't even count your trip money. So now you have $5,000 that you just want to invest. So you have $5,000 that you're going to save, and then $5,000 that you can invest, right? So you might want to invest $4,000 into an index fund, and then $1,000 into the day trade, take your chances, right? Like if you're like, okay, well, I like this product, and a lot of people seem to like this product, and like, so invest in that. If you do this, I suggest you. I suggest you learn a little bit about accounting, like learn about the balance sheet and an owner statement or owner's equity and things like that. But there's this thing called earnings before interest, deductions, and amortization. So you want to basically understand that, and then and understand the corporate philosophy, right? So if you could, like, because I came up with this strategy, I basically reinvented the hedge fund. And I went to I looked at Walmart actually, and I think a couple other stocks, but particularly Walmart, because I'm like, okay, well, what's a successful American company? But I specifically went to an American exchange to just try to look at the numbers, because I'm a numbers guy. So I just want to look at the numbers and just break it down into the numbers and be like, okay, this is what I like about these numbers. Right. And then so I punched in the numbers, like certain numbers that I liked in the Canadian Stock Exchange. And I came up with 23, 24 different stocks. Like, so I came up with all the banks, I came up with all the railroad companies, and Canadian Tire, and say Tim Hortons, and some other blue chip companies. And so I basically reinvented the hedge fund because, with this formula, right, like just coming up with, like, and one of the major ones was interest. It's EDBIA or something like that, earnings before interest, deductions, and amortization. And then owner's equity, right? So basically capital expenditures, basically. So when they have money, like, does the capital expenditures, like how well does a company spend their money? So like if they're into, like just say they're a toilet paper company, right? And so are they planting trees? Or do they have a sustainable future? Are they buying land to buy trees to be able to harvest their toilet paper in the future, right? Are they making good fiscal decisions, basically? And so, like, as long as you know the numbers, and then you understand, learn a little bit about the industry, then you can see what the industry's leaders are doing. And then, but once you find out the numbers that you like, and once you get more familiar with it, you're going to be able to start making home runs, or getting doubles, or triples, or singles, getting on base, like baseball, right? You want to get on base and then steal second base, and then get yourself in scoring position. Your team hits an RBI, then you get a run, right? Like, and you want to manufacture these moves, right, by making good decisions long term, prudent decisions long term, right? Consistent decisions, positive decisions. Right, a poor decision would be to start smoking crack, right, long term, right? You're gonna make, a lot of people that smoke crack, next thing you know, they're robbing their grandmothers, they're breaking into their houses to facilitate their addiction, right? Whereas a good prudent decision would be to, once again, if you get extra money, get a pay raise, start saving, like live, save, and invest. Like if you could, like, so live extra, let's say 33%. Invest 33% and then save 33%. Then the flip side of the coin now is, just see there's a recession. Like all of a sudden it's like you look on the news, and because when you're early 20s, right, the last thing you want to do is check the news, right? But then by the time you're about 30 years old, you start wanting to pay attention to the world, the reality, what's going on around you, right? So one of the things to do is watch the news, and like, so if you're American, it'd be MSNBC. I forget the one, Susan Orman or something like that. I believe MSNBC or something like that. That was their news one, money news, basically money market, and you would learn about the stocks and what have you, right? So you would learn some of the terms and of the industry. But so basically, you'd want to find out, because they're going to tell you, like, if Canada, if Canada was going into a recession, like, so just say right now, if Canada was going into a recession, like say you had $100,000 in your account, right? So in a recession, that means there's going to be inflation, right? So typically what they do for inflation is they decrease the interest rate, so it's easier to get a loan, right? Because then more people are getting a loan, then it stimulates the economy, right? Whereas if they want to deflate the economy, then they raise the interest rates, and then it's going to discourage people from investing. So then it's going to slow down the economy, basically, and it prevents hyperinflation and things like that, right? So those are the strategies, right? So that being said, you have purchasing power, right? So like, just say you had $100,000, your $100,000 at the beginning of a recession is up worth $100,000. You get $100,000 worth, you get the bang for your buck, right? But at the end of the recession, like say if you were to look at, say, from 2020 to 2025, that $100,000 from 2020, you might only be able to get $43,000 worth of products or $50,000 worth of products in 2025. So that means at the beginning of the recession, it's like, okay, I've been prudent, I've been saving, and I don't want to lose out on this money. I don't want to lose my purchasing power. So I need to make a big ticket item purchase, right? That's when you buy like a new car, you buy a house, you get bang for your buck. If not, you're going to end up losing money, right? In that analogy, like just say you left that $100,000 in your account, it's still going to look like you might have, say, $106,000 in interest or whatever, right? But you can't buy nowhere near what you would have been able to buy if you were to spend that money, that $100,000. And what happens is if everybody did this, you circumvent the recession from happening. Because what happens is in a recession, everybody gets afraid, so then they stop spending. So then it exacerbates or compounds the problem. Whereas like you want people to spend money and in these times and aggressively, like, you know, unfortunately, I like Texas Hold'em poker, right? I like risk. So if I had say $100,000, like I'd be during a recession, I'd probably be able to turn that into like say $300,000-$400,000. Just like people would be buying like sound stocks, they'd be like their stocks might be hemorrhaging, right? And I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna buy now, right? When they would smell fear and I'd see opportunity, right? So I'd be buying when there was opportunity, when people seen fear, right? And a lot of rich people, they get very rich during recessions because of this. Because when your stocks go down, it's only a paper loss until you sell it. Then you materialize it. As soon as you sell your shares, you materialize it. But just say, I'll show you the calculator here. So basically, this turned out to be a longer video, but it's a lot of useful information. So just say you had 1,000 shares, and then now, so how much do these shares? Say $1,000. So now you have 1,000 shares, and then now, so you have 1,000 shares, and then now they're only worth 0.75. So your 1,000 shares are worth 0.75. Now you could buy. If you have faith in the industry, now you could buy 1,000 more shares. Like now you could spend $1,000 again, and then times 0.75, and then you're going to be able to get. Okay, wait, no, this is a. It worked out. This isn't working. This is the wrong math here. Let me see. So basically, so you bought 1,000 shares, and so they were at $1 per share. Now they're worth 75 cents per share. So now, if you bought $1,000 worth, so I'm going to cancel this here. So 1,000, probably 1,000 divided by 0.75. So you're going to get that many shares. Then plus the original 750 that you would have had. So now you can see with the $2,000 that you had, if they were at $1 per share, you spent $2,000, you would only have $2,000 worth of shares. But since they went down to 75 cents per share, and you still you had the gall, the nerve, the balls to buy $1,000 worth of shares, you now have basically, you made $83 off that. So not only that, so now just say, so let's see, so now it recovers to, so how would I do this? So that's the shares that you would have. So now you have, but these shares, so now, so I just want to do the math here. So that's 75, and then for $1,000, you got that. So well, yeah, I guess that's it. So if you were to, if it was to recover, so basically in that scenario, so you had I guess I'll break it down like this way. So you had $1,000 right at $1 per share. So you had 1,000 shares. Now went down to 75 cents per share. So you only had 750 shares. Now then you had the money too. So you invested another $1,000, and you were able to buy for $1,000. You're able to get 1,333 shares at 75 cents a share. So then once, if the market were to rebound back to $1 per share, your original buying point, you would have made $83 profit just for recovering. That's not assuming that it went higher than that, right? So there is an expression, don't invest in a sinking ship, but like there's certain industries like until we come out with teleportation, like an airline industry, like like say the main brand, like say Air Canada or Air America or Qatar Airways, or if they have the country's name on the airway, on the airline company, they're gonna recover. They're going to recover because the country's not going to let them go bankrupt, right? It's an embarrassment to the country. Like if Bank of Canada, like say Air Canada went bankrupt, it'd be an embarrassment, right? But whereas Bearskin Airlines or like say no name airlines, like they might go bankrupt, right? Especially if they have poor management. But like if they have like a name brand, like Air Canada, like the country's name is kind of backed on it, then the government is they tend to bail them out basically, and they're going to help them out, right? So they're going to recover, right? So in that analogy, so back now, that's assuming that like so once again you bought at like at $1 per share, so now it went back up to $1 per share, then you would have $2,083. So now just say it improves even more. It went up to $1.25 per share. Like you're going to make $270 off that, whereas by taking advantage of that risk, whereas you would have only made $135 off the original 1,000 if you didn't invest the second 1,000, right? So you got to like. There's been times where I was able to make those moves and it worked out advantageously for me. And so you got to as long as you have faith in the company, right? As long as you have faith in the company and the industry, then make those decisions, right? Because the lower, like, whereas if I would have been like, oh crap, like it's down, like I just lost $250, like I'm panicking, and then I'm gonna sell, right? And then I would have lost $250. But with my strategy, I came out ahead, $83. Based on, so instead of losing $250, I made $83. So really I made $333 worth of profit because I would have lost 250, which I didn't. So I saved $250 and then I made $83 profit off that strategy, right? So that being said, if you're going to invest in stocks, like if you just because I did this real-time stock trader game, and like with $5,000 I made $5,000 the very next day. Like I would have made a fortune off it, right? But what I learned was just because I want to buy, or particularly sell, just because I want to sell doesn't mean people want to buy, right? So that it's almost like when a new iPhone comes out, right? People stand in line for it, right? So if you want to sell, like don't get greedy. So what I used to do was I would look for stocks that I believed in their, like I would look at their capital expenditures and see like if they were investing in things that were prudent for that industry compared to their competitors, right? Like so there might be like on your stock trading app there might be top 10 companies, right? So you could check out each one and be like, okay, well, how are they spending their capital expenditures, and then what is the news regarding the industry, and then look at their accounting information, like their balance sheet, and see if it all works out and see if the numbers add up, right? And that the numbers aren't fudged, right? But then so you would basically be able to see, and so if you have faith in the company based on their capital expenditures, the news in the industry, and how likely it is for the industry to recover, then it's like, okay, if they were trading, for me, I liked if they were performing below their 52-week average, right? Like so like if they were just either at like $6 per share, but now their high was $6 a share over 52 weeks, but they're now trading at $4.27, right? So it's like, okay, well, I want to buy some shares, and then immediately as soon as I buy them, it's like, okay, I want to put an order in to sell now at $5.90 per share for a certain percentage, right, of my stock, right? And then so I'm not getting greedy, because like getting greedy would be like, okay, well, I think they're going to go up to $7 a share, and then I'm going to sell then, right? And you could put some like, say 10%. You might want to put it like say at 650 or 625 and try to hit a home run. And but I'm more conservative, so I want it to be in and out, right? So because it's more likely once it goes up to $5.90 a share, I'm going to be selling. I'm going to be one of the first in line, because it might take 3 months or 6 months for it to hit that number again. So I would have been standing in line in that scenario for 3 to 6 months. So it's first come, first serve, right? So I'm always going to be able to sell first and then get my money, right? So then, like, say I could let it, like, so in that scenario, you might want to see, if you plan on selling, just say 75% is what you would need to make a profit or make your money back, right? So just say 75% of your shares was what you need to make your money back, right? So then you would put the conservative number in there to make your money back, and then let it ride with the 25%, right? And then you might say 5%. You might say, okay, well, I think it's going to go up to $6, so I'll sell 5% at $6. So I'd put another order in for $6. And then another order in for, say, 610 or 625, whatever you think it's likely to do, right, based on the industry, right? And then at the same time, you would, like, since you're trying to day trade at this point, like we're at the index fund, you're just basically set it, forget it. It's like, it's payday, I'm just going to invest in an index fund, and then every payday, higher, low, higher, low, higher, low, every payday, right? But when you're day trading, you would want to be like, okay, like, if now all of a sudden the CEO is like selling shares, or there's big industry news, like, or he's retiring, or he gets fired or whatever, right? Then you might want to question, like, whether or not you want to sell those stocks, because you could have been like another thing too, you'd want to listen to their mission statement, right? Like, you'd want to read their mission statement, and if you agree with it to your core, if you're like, yeah, I stand by those words, right? And then so that might be the tenets of that CEO, right? So that might be his philosophy or her philosophy. But then once they're gone, like, the corporate philosophy or management might change, right? So then the direction of the company might change. So it might not be advantageous, or it might be more advantageous, depending on. So you'd want to be in the loop, right? Like, but basically you set it on your phone, and then when it does sell, like, you get a little notification, like, wow, I just made $1,500, or I just made $10,000, and then you go back into day trading and do it again. But these philosophies, like, I was conservative, right? So I did it over. I looked at it, like, with my strategy, I could look at it at a 5-minute interval or a 30-year interval, and I can make the same pertinent decisions based on the same type of graphs, right? Like, there's the candle wick, the Bollinger Band, and there's some other things, like earnings before deductions, interest amortization, and there would be some other things. There's a whole bunch of graphs, right? So the more technical, the more nerdy you get into it, the better, the more informed your decisions are going to be, right? Like, because a hypothesis is an educated guess, right? Like, it's like in poker. Like, at first, if they're bluffing, like, when they make a bet, you have a 50% chance, okay, either they have it or they don't, right? But after you get more experience, then you get more educated in your guess. So if you get to about 80-90% or say 70 to 80% or 70 to 90%, then you're phenomenal. You're going to be a professional player. But as long as you make mathematical decisions for the long term, right? So every once in a while, the short term, you might want to chase a flush draw on the turn or straight draw on the turn, right? But usually you would never want to do that, because mathematically, like, a flush draw in that scenario, you would only have 9 outs for the flush, and just say there's 2 opponents. Like, well, if you didn't see any cards, you see 6, you're aware of 6 cards. So I do conservative math. So there's 6 cards minus 52, that's 46. So 9 divided by 46, your odds are 1 in 5 to hit the flush, right? So your odds are terrible. You're going to miss 80% of the time, right? But a lot of people lose that bet all the time, because they go for the flush, right? So maybe if you have 2 pair, then at that point you could you have the full house possibility. So you would have 4 outs for the full house, and then you would have the 9 outs. So you'd have 13 outs, but then that's still only that's like a little bit over 1 in 4, right? So you're going to still lose 3 out of 4 times, right? So it all depends. So that would mean when they're betting, then the pot odds are like, so if they give you pot odds that you're going to win 2 out of 5 times or 2 out of 4 times, then it's not worth it for you. But if they give you pot odds that you're going to win 1 out of 8 times, then it's worthwhile for you to call, because then you're twice as profitable. But if they give you pot odds where you're going to where you would have to win 2 times out of 4, you're going to be half as profitable. So you're going to be a losing player long term if you always make this decision, because you're going to be losing 50% of your money. Whereas if you like, so that being said, now if you're betting and you know that they're on the flush draw or the straight draw, you want to give them poor pot odds. You want to give them atrocious odds. You want to make them a bad mathematical player to make them make bad calls, right? And then you want to do the flip side, right? Is try to make good mathematical calls, right? Because poker's all about outs. Like Like, but the flush, like how many cards can make your hand, right? So you look at the board and see what the best possible hand could be, and then you try to play strict based on that board. And then until, like at first, right, you could get away with this strategy, but then after a while, well, people will take advantage of you based on experience. So then you do have to loosen up a bit, right? But if you, like with poker, like I'll end this video in a second. But with poker, if you're playing nine-handed, like there's advantages to that, right? Because you only have to invest money 2 hands out of 9, so you get to see 7 hands for free, right? But so at that point, you have to play a really strict game. Like you need pocket aces, pocket kings, pocket queens, ace king, ace queen reluctantly, like very, very strict game. And then, because they almost always have the straight, or they almost always have the flush, or a 2-pair, or a 3 of a kind. But whereas if you play, like, say, I like playing 5 or 6-handed because you have to, it's like you have to swim in the deep end more often, right? So you have to play a more open game, and so high cards wins a lot, like not a lot of time, but high card wins hands, and pairs win the hand, and then 2 pairs are rare. But so that being said, if you really want to get good at poker, just go join a poker app that has heads up poker, and then you can learn the mathematics of poker playing against one opponent, right? Because if you're playing against 9 opponents heads up, or playing against 8 other opponents heads up, you have to beat 8 other opponents. Whereas if you're playing heads up, you only have to beat one person, right? So then when you're playing heads up, you want to see, okay, well, how do they play top pair? How do they play middle pair? How do they play bottom pair? How do they play straight draw, flush draws? How do they play these, right? And then base your decisions based on that. And then if you recognize their name, and then you see how they play them at the ring game, then you're able to clean them up, like especially in person, right? If you go to the casino and if there's a heads up tournament or whatever, you see them, you want to play heads up against all the pros, because then you're going to see, you get a peek behind the screen, because they do play almost the same as they would in a ring game, but they have to be more aggressive heads up. But they do play, they're going to play top pair similar. They're going to make similar bets and what have you, right? So you have to, like, that being said, now the flip side of the coin is you want to switch it up all the time. You always want to be random, right? You always want to be random, and if their opponent is really good, you want to avoid the really good opponents at first. But then after a while, if you want to be the best, you got to challenge them, right? Because you're going to learn things, right? So sometimes you, like, if you're in a tournament, like you see the pros, like, but if I'm in a tournament, like say there's 1,000 opponents and I have the chips to, I'm going to make information calls where I'm going to lose the hand. I know I'm going to lose the hand, but I might be able to bust this opponent by gathering that information. So like, just say like one of the number one players on the planet, right? Like just say I was in a tournament with them where I knew I was going to play like probably 1,000 hours or 100 hours with this opponent in the future against them, right? So I might make an information call where I'm going to lose the hand. Like I'm going to lose the battle, but I'm going to win the war against this opponent by making those information calls, right? At the cash game, you can't really do because they could stick and move, right? They could buy, like they could take that hand from you, and then you gain this information against them, but then you might never see them again, right? But in the tournament, unless they move tables, they're stuck with you. Like they're kind of in a cage with you, like an MMA fight. They can't leave you. Like, so you just pin them in the corner and just be aggressive. And because some people, it's like you cough at them like with a bluff, then they fold, right? Because like when you bet in poker, there's 3 things you're trying to achieve. You're either trying to bet to make them call, bet to make them fold, or bet to make them raise, right? So every time they bet in poker, you gotta ask yourself, which one of those 3 are they trying to get me to do, right? So on the river, if you see a small bet on the river, be suspicious. Be suspicious of a small bet on the river, because usually they want you to raise and go all in, and usually they bust you, right? Because you can't get lucky at that point because all the cards are already out, right? So be very suspicious of a small bet on the river. Suspicious. This is what happens when those people play me right there. With brain-computer interfaces, neuroprosthetics, Google search it, and a Gauss meter and a Tesla meter reveals subliminal in Canada, which rigs pro sports and pro gambling.